alien students learned the astonishing truth of human ascension. Prepare yourself for a thought-provoking trip through human evolution's history. This film will reveal the startling reality of humanity's ascent. Fasten your seatbelts as we delve deeply into the field of cosmic exploration and enlightenment. Good evening, class. Today I will be teaching you all about the rise of the primordial race. As I tell this, the crowded classroom erupts in gasps and whispers from the shocked students. Every student there is a future politician at the galactic level. They all expected to learn this information eventually, but none of them anticipated it would be this soon. Now please calm down. I know it's shocking to learn this information so early, but there are already safeguards in place. First, all of you have had your memories discreetly scanned for the past 6 months. Secondly, during these classes, an mtic agent has deeply ingrained itself in each and every one of your minds. Lastly, students started yelling, "Calm down, everyone, your school and teachers are not the ones who did these things." It was myself, in fact, who did all of that. We can't have greedy or corrupt people learning my people's secrets after all. As this voice spoke up, blue light swirled in every corner of the room and slowly coalesced into a being next to the podium. As the being took shape, a stunned silence enveloped the room, and a few students directly fainted there. Standing in the front of their classroom was a human that descended into physical form, wearing a crisp, clean suit. No less, the teacher looked over to the human, and she smiled at him thankfully. Then, breaking the silence, she spoke up again. "Now then, please wake your unconscious classmates if you would, everyone." Good, since that's done. Let me start by saying our galaxy's last few thousand years of peace is because the humans did not in fact leave the galaxy. They ascended, yes, but still watch over us and intervene when major wars or atrocities are about to occur and stop them. Some of you might even recall reading about the news a few years ago when 2 pulsars were about to collide. The explosion that resulted would have destroyed a dozen nearby stars and released enough radiation to wipe out half of life in the galaxy. However, humans descended and transported one of the pulses to a different galaxy, so even though they appear to be gone, they are still here, guarding us like guardian angels. Jonathan, would you like to give your lecture to these eager students? Jonathan grinned broadly and launched straight into the lecture, showing pride on his face. "Why, yeah, of course I'd love to, because as you've all heard, humans are still around, and I'm kind of tangible. Proof of that, isn't I? Yes, we did. Ascend, yes, we did abandon our physical bodies, but no, we have not stopped watching this galaxy in the higher plane. We have physical bodies again, but we can come back down here to live as energy if we so choose. The laws of reality, up there, are a bit different closer to the fundamental secrets of the underlying structure of reality, really. That's why any species decides to ascend. We complete our understanding and research on this plane, this dimension. It's also a basic requirement for ascension. If you don't have 100% of the laws of this level figured out, your mind won't be able to handle the way laws and even basic physics work up there anyway. That's enough of all of that. I can't spoil too much about the higher dimensions, so let's get into the of humanity, shall we? It started a long time ago in the human year 201100, or somewhere around there. It's the human year 34,000 now. And due to this large amount of time, specific dates from that far back were lost anyway. It started back then, shortly after the unification of Earth. We had just finished a devastating war of ideology, the last one we would ever have. In fact, we lost a full 60% of the human population at the time. Eventually we came out of it, and our Grand Authority at the time, along with his council of advisors, calmed the remaining chaos and started to rebuild Earth. We had destroyed almost every major city on the planet. At the time in that war, it was a dark time in human history, but also one of the brightest. After everything was settled, we began to advance rapidly for the betterment of ourselves, of each other, and our society as a whole. One of these advancements was realizing that one of our most deadly diseases, cancer, could never be cured by conventional medicine. We learned this because we fully sequenced and understood the genetic structure of ourselves. That's when a bold idea was put forward by a medical researcher who was typically ousted by his peers. He had the idea of an internal. The concept behind Gene Vault was that an individual's body would contain a template, and cells could only replicate from this template. People thought he was crazy, and he was unable to move forward with the idea until a terminal stage 4 cancer patient agreed to undergo his treatment. The researcher repurposed some nanobots used in cellular reconstruction for cases of nerve damage, programming them to attack and destroy any cell that did not match the information of the individual's template. The only cells that would vary from this template were neurons, as they simply changed too much during life, with a 20% allowance for neuroplasticity. This allowed cells to proliferate and grow naturally, but too much decency was C. To the surprise of many in the medical community, the stage 4 patient recovered in just 1 month, and the expelled researcher was suddenly praised and heralded as a genius by his peers. However, he wasn't finished by far. He then devised a system whereby a separate set of nanomachines would administer and synthesize this chemical only to cells that had healthy and perfectly intact telomeres. With this step, he created biological immortality, and his name will live on in human society forever. Immediately, every student in the class raised one appendage, and some aquatic species let off light signals. Upon witnessing this, Jonathan grinned broadly and proceeded slowly through each question, noting a few noteworthy ones, such as Q. If mankind already possessed nanotechnology for medical purposes, why wasn't this done sooner? Because of corporate greed and corruption prior to World War I, these nanotechnology devices were kept secret and were only utilized by the wealthy and powerful, or Q. We got our scientific mindset backwards for most of our history, mocking ideas that weren't mainstream, but the essence of science is to question everything and consider all angles. None should be shunned unless disproven. Finally, Jonathan's favorite Q, wait. This was only the starting point for human ascension. This would be a plateau for any other race. Why was the researcher called mad? That idea seemed rather brilliant, and it was against the norm. We hadn't quite established at that point that unique and non-standard ideas were the ones that should be most encouraged. Humanity is a naturally curious and greedy species. We use this curiosity and greed to focus on learning, rather than self-interested gain. Our curiosity made us constantly seek out new information and knowledge, and our greed made us crave it more than anything else. Once all of the questions were answered, Jonathan carried out his lesson, and that was the first step towards biological immortality. The next step was integrin in our minds and bodies, with our technology on a higher level. This wasn't hard. Most of us had neuroprocessor at this point. After all, integrating with computers and the like was a simple matter of willing ourselves to do it. But we took it a step further and made ourselves several virtual worlds, our own virtual galaxy. Even some places we would meld our minds with others for a time to solve larger, more complex problems. In others, we would simply play games and have fun that the pesky conventional rules of reality disallow. But a virtual one does we integrated with not only our machines but with our own bodies. More thoroughly using our neuroprocessor, we connected the more instinctual or unconscious parts of the brain to the parts used for higher thinking memory. And the like, we gained total mastery of the flesh. But we noticed even with perfect control over our minds and bodies, something was off. We couldn't control emotions no matter what we did. Something always interfered. So we went through everything and looked it over and came to the only logical conclusion. The soul, we determined that the soul had to exist, but we couldn't seem to measure it or determine its location in the body. We tried for centuries with technology that to many of you would be inconceivable, microscopes using artificial types of radiation that could view individual quarks. For example, we used every scanner, every sensor imaginable, but we just couldn't find the soul. We knew for a fact it had to exist and be measurable. Somehow, eventually, someone decided to look at ancient pre-war records and crackpot theories. Eventually, we came across one that seemed outlandish. But remember, at this point, outlandish ideas were like prize gems. So we read up on it, and essentially it said, I have a theory of my own about energy, not thermal, gravitational or electrical, but biological energy, key mana, life energy, psychic energy, and all the other names we give it. People write it off as non-scientific. But I would like to posit that perhaps this energy is real, and we simply are dismissing it because it sounds too strange. But the truth is often stranger than fiction, and I believe this is also the case here when you run electricity through a wire or any non-S superconductor. What happens? It generated an electric or electromagnetic field. Right, the resistance is what causes it. But that's not important here. What if mtic and the like are simply the electromagnetic field that the nervous system of the body is giving off psychics or energy users or whatever you want to call them? Simply figured out a way to control this field based on how energy flows through our nervous system and our flesh. A muscle in the brain that humanity long since forgot how to flex for some reason or other. If we could learn to control this energy again, wouldn't we as humans with nothing but our organic bodies be able to manipulate energy and do things we would consider magical or psychic, using our energy field to interact with energy outside our bodies and change the universe around us with it? I do wonder if maybe this would allow us to know once and for all if there is a soul, for if there is a soul, it is surely a form of energy, and should we learn to consciously see, feel, hear, and interact with energy in these ways, we would know of our soul. This document inspired many, and we began meditating and looking inwards to our own bodies to find answers. Eventually, a method was found and formed the foundation of what we ended up calling cultivation. This founding method inspired dozens more, and eventually we knew for a fact how to control the energy fields of our bodies. Decades later, someone finally did it. They were able to sense their own soul. The power they wielded was immense. It was like they had the power of the Big Bang in the palm of their hands. Once we found the soul, we had perfect our minds, our bodies, and now even our souls were being studied and worked on to perfect. I wish I could tell you all exactly how to do it, but it's esoteric by its very nature. Everyone experiences it in a vastly different way, in just the human race, let alone alien species. But humanity dug deeper and eventually discovered every alien race was capable of the same feats and abilities. But we as a whole decided that this should be a journey that every species takes themselves with, that using our essentially infinite lifespans, we began to look inwards and use this ability to feel and see energies. Every human being suddenly became able to pry into the secrets of reality itself and just know how it worked innately through this energy. So eventually humanity as a whole, but also individually, learned the true inner workings of reality. With this understanding came a feeling we felt the next level, another type of energy. Once we reached enlightenment about our reality, we began to feel the walls of the very dimension we live in. We felt the restrictions of third-dimensional space like a boulder on our chests, so we dug even deeper into ourselves and found that we could take all of the energy from our bodies and separate from them, existing independently as souls. Through energy, we could replicate every feat our technology granted us, and more, much more. We began to guide the whole galaxy as overseers and guardians at that point, and over time figured out a few ways to leave this third-dimensional space and move on to the next level. Now we are what you all know of as myths and legends that are godlike creatures. You all look up to, though almost all of us hate being called gods or anything similar. We are human, and it is the rightful place of gods to tremble at our feet. If they exist, why should we be called something lesser, all life in the universe? In humanities, eyes, in fact, is greater than a so-called god, but I'm ranting now. That is the full story of how humanity is ascended. Any last queries? All of the room's limbs surged up once more, and numerous more lights flickered on. When the students started yelling their questions like children once more, rather than the adults in a college-level class they truly were, Jonathan grinned and shook his head. And there you have it, people. The magnificent history of humanity's rise to glory. Recall that there are a gazillion secrets in the cosmos just waiting to be revealed. We appreciate you coming along for this thrilling adventure. Remember to subscribe and hit like for more mind-blowing content. Till then, continue your explorations.